All right, picture this. You've got a 19-year-old girl standing in a luxurious bathroom of a Havana hotel, and her heart is just pounding out of her chest. In her hands, she's desperately trying to fish dissolving botulism pills out of a jar of cold cream, and just a few feet away, out in the bedroom, is Fidel Castro, the exact man she's supposed to assassinate. Welcome to our explainer on the declassified case files of the CIA, where we're peeling back the curtain on some of the agency's most audacious triumphs and, honestly, its most devastating failures.
So, in today's explainer, we're opening up a classified dossier that spans 3 distinct decades of shifting global threats. We'll be looking at 1, the Castro poison plot; 2, the fake Hollywood rescue; 3, tragedy and revenge in Beirut; and 4, the birth of modern counterterrorism. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Castro Poison Plot. Passion, Poison, and the Cold War.
Okay, so the year is 1959. Fidel Castro has seized power in Cuba, and the CIA's unlikely weapon to take him out was that 19-year-old girl I mentioned earlier, Marita Lawrence. Now, Marita actually met Castro when he boarded her father's cruise ship, the MS Berlin. She was completely swept away by his charisma and literally moved straight into his 24th floor penthouse at the Havana Hilton. So how do you turn a teenage lover into a deadly asset? Well, the CIA used a very precise foreign agent recruitment cycle. Step 1, spotting. They recognized Marita had unparalleled access to Castro's bedroom. Step 2, assessment. They looked for vulnerabilities. When Marita, who was actually pregnant with Castro's child, was drugged, subjected to a forced abortion, and sent off to a New York hospital, the agency stepped in. Step 3 is development. Agents surrounded her, capitalizing on her immense grief and anger, basically convincing her that Castro was a communist monster who had betrayed her. And finally, the pitch. They just outright asked her to kill him to save the United States. And surprisingly enough, she agreed. To pull this off, the CIA obviously needed the perfect, completely untraceable weapon. CIA operative Frank Sturgis supplied her with these highly lethal botulism toxin pills. And get this, it perfectly illustrates the bizarre alliances of the Cold War, because Sturgis actually got those pills directly from the mafia. Yeah, the mob wanted Castro dead so they could get their Cuban casinos back. Now, the plan was simple. Drop the pills in his drink, let them dissolve invisibly. But Marita, absolutely terrified of getting caught at customs, made a fatal error. She stashed them inside a jar of cold cream. So when the moment finally came to use them in the penthouse, the pills had basically melted into this useless, sticky paste. She's desperate to wash this toxic paste down the drain, completely panicking. And then Castro walks in. He knew. In what sounds like a scene straight out of a movie, Castro unbuckles his gun belt, hands Marita his own loaded pistol, and just lays back on the bed, puffing his cigar. He looks right at her and says, "Nobody can kill me." Faced with a man she once loved, physically holding his life in her hands, she just completely lost her nerve. She emptied the gun's magazine and handed it back. It was a profoundly human failure for the CIA.
Well, that dramatic night in Havana was a total bust. The CIA definitely didn't stop there. Take a look at this staggering number: 638. That is the estimated number of wildly varied, completely unsuccessful plots the CIA and other actors launched to assassinate Fidel Castro over the coming decades. I mean, we're talking everything from exploding cigars to sniper attacks, and he survived every single one of them.
Section 2, the fake Hollywood rescue. Tradecraft and illusion. We're leaping forward 2 decades to 1979 Iran, where this crazy, high-stakes ticking clock scenario is unfolding. The U.S. Embassy had just been totally overrun by revolutionary students. The whole world is watching the reality play out on their TVs. 66 American hostages paraded blindfolded at gunpoint. But there was this entirely secret reality happening behind the scenes. 6 Americans, including a married couple named Mark and Cora Lyjak, had actually managed to slip out a side door. They became fugitives on the streets of Tehran before finally finding refuge at the residence of Canadian diplomats John Sheardown and Ken Taylor. These 6 house guests hid there in just agonizing paranoia for 85 long days. So, to get them out, the CIA deployed what is arguably the absolute zenith of their creative tradecraft. They brought in Tony Mendez, who was quite literally their master of disguise. Mendez partnered with Oscar-winning Hollywood makeup artist John Chambers to spin up a totally fake production company called Studio 6. Their cover story? They were a Canadian film crew scouting exotic locations for a fake sci-fi movie called Argo. The CIA went all out, creating incredibly detailed pocket litter, matchbooks, receipts, business cards, just so the diplomats had physical proof to back up their new aliases. And my favorite detail, when it came time to forge Iranian entry stamps onto their fake Canadian passports, the CIA's ink pad had completely dried up. Mendez's brilliant on-the-fly fix was to use high-octane scotch from the Canadian ambassador's liquor cabinet to moisten the pad, and it worked perfectly. Now, this ticking clock built a truly terrifying timeline. You have the embassy breach in November, desperate flash cables flying around in December, and everything culminated on January 25th, 1980, right at Mehrabad Airport. Mendez literally walked the 6 diplomats right into the lion's den. At the airport, they faced these agonizing delays for Swissair Flight 363. Revolutionary guards are swarming everywhere. The diplomats actually nearly blew their cover multiple times. At one point, one of them nervously picked up a local Farsi newspaper to read, which is a massive red flag for a supposedly Canadian film crew. But Mendez's absolute calm is what kept them grounded through the whole ordeal.
Miraculously, they passed through final immigration, their fake yellow exit forms were barely scrutinized, and they boarded the plane to Zurich. The sheer genius of this operation was really in its absurdity. As Tony Mendez himself noted, it was a perfect example of truth being stranger than fiction. A wildly improbable Hollywood illusion successfully smuggled 6 Americans out of one of the most hostile environments on the planet.
Section 3, Tragedy and Revenge in Beirut, The Brutal Awakening. After that incredible high, the agency's fortunes were about to take a very dark, very gritty turn in 1983 Lebanon. This is where the CIA faced a newly emergent, shadowy threat that operated completely differently than the Soviets. We're talking about Islamic Jihad, soon to be known globally as Hezbollah. The escalation of violence in Beirut was just rapid and devastating. In April 1983, a suicide van bombed the U.S. Embassy, killing 63 people, including the top CIA Middle East analyst, Robert Ames. Then, in October, a massive truck bomb hit the U.S. Marine barracks. The very next year, the CIA's own station chief, William Buckley, was kidnapped after being betrayed by his lover, Zainab. Months later, CIA Director William Casey received a horrific video showing Buckley being actively tortured for classified information. This sequence of catastrophic, deeply personal losses pushed Casey to his absolute breaking point. To really grasp the sheer scale of this tragedy, just take a second to process this number, 241. That is the staggering number of U.S. Marines acting as peacekeepers who were killed while they slept in that October truck bombing. The terrorists drove a vehicle loaded with an estimated 12,000 pounds of explosives right into the lobby. To put that into perspective, it was the largest non-nuclear explosion since World War II. Now, following the law strictly, the CIA was explicitly banned from carrying out assassinations. But seeing the deaths of his Marines, the loss of his station chief, and the discovery via aerial photos that Hezbollah was running a literal car bomb school to target U.S. facilities, Director Casey sought revenge. According to declassified accounts and investigative reporting, Casey allegedly bypassed those legal bans entirely. He coordinated a highly illegal $3 million off-the-books assassination. Working in the shadows alongside Saudi Arabia's Prince Bandar and an ex-SS officer, the goal was to use local Lebanese militias to strike back using the terrorists' exact own weapon, a car bomb. Their target was Sheikh Mohammed Fadlallah. He was the man that, based on flawed Israeli and Lebanese intelligence, was claimed to be the mastermind behind Hezbollah. So, on March 8, 1985, a Lebanese militia proxy parked a truck packed with 750 pounds of explosives right near Fadlallah's mosque. But the execution was an absolute disaster. They missed their target entirely. Fadlallah walked away completely unharmed. Instead, the massive blast leveled the surrounding neighborhood, killing 83 innocent civilians, mostly women and children, and wounding 283 others. It was a truly horrifying consequence of relying on proxy militias and flawed foreign intelligence. Section 4. Birth of Modern Counterterrorism, Evolution from Failure. The unmitigated disaster of that Beirut car bomb served as a massive, brutal awakening for the intelligence community. The sheer loss of American and civilian life made them realize that their traditional methods were fundamentally broken when dealing with this new wave of decentralized terrorism. So, in response, William Casey revolutionized the agency's structure. In 1986, he established the Counterterrorism Center. You see, before this, the spies on the ground and the analysts back at headquarters were completely siloed from each other. The CTC seamlessly combined them. Casey recognized that the CIA could no longer rely purely on foreign proxies or allied intelligence to identify targets. They absolutely needed their own people, feeding real-time, highly accurate information directly to the analysts who could actually make sense of it.
And this brilliantly illustrates the direct link right to our modern world. The catastrophe of killing 83 innocent civilians with a blunt, untargeted instrument like a car bomb highlighted a desperate, critical need. The agency required a way to execute highly accurate, remote targeting without causing massive civilian ground casualties and without putting their own agents at risk. So this historical failure in Beirut was the direct genesis of the modern unmanned aerial vehicle program, the lethal drones that completely define the CIA's counterterrorism tactics today.
So when you look at it all, from a teenage girl holding melting poison pills in a cold cream jar, to Oscar-winning Hollywood illusions saving lives in Tehran, to the devastatingly brutal consequences of an off-the-books car bomb that birthed the drone age, the history of the CIA is just this incredibly complex web of extreme operations. And it leaves us with a pretty heavy question to ponder. In the shadows of global intelligence, do the ends justify the means, or do catastrophic failures ultimately force the most necessary evolution? Thank you for exploring these case files with me today. I really hope this explainer gave you a clearer picture of the incredible and sometimes terrible reality of espionage. Keep questioning and keep learning.
The truth is out there, hidden in the shadows. Subscribe now to Hidden Truth Files and uncover what the world tried to bury.